Hello there. The UK is heading for civil war. That is the assessment of David Betts and Michael Rainsborough writing in the Daily Sceptic, and these guys know their stuff. David Betts is Professor of War in the Modern World at King's College London. Michael Rainsborough is Professor of Strategic Theory at the Centre for Future Defence and National Security, Canberra. And here's a taster of what they're talking about. For 3 decades, the British people have performed a miracle of restraint. They have endured, without revolt, a sequence of humiliations that would have unhinged nations of fiercer temperament. They watched their industries dismantled, their high streets hollowed out, their borders treated as abstractions, and their taxes spent on being told how awful they are. They have seen their cities remade without consent and their concerns rebuked as phobias. It is, in a bleak way, one of the great feats of collective stoicism in modern history, though perhaps its most dangerous. And that particular one really gelled with me. And I'm just wondering if it gels with other people out there. What do you think, Richard?
Well, Jeff, we're not talking about two bloggers here. We're talking about two defence professors. They're not ranters like yourself and myself. They're the sort of people, when you think about it, who are highly esteemed, and you would expect persons such as this to not react in such a way and to defend the establishment and the system. However, that's not what we are seeing. It almost seems like there's a tone of resignation as to the situation we're in. A dose of reality, one might say. Although it could, some people out there will be construing this as alarmist and inflaming a situation. But I think the article itself, I think the article speaks for itself. And again, this was in the Daily Sceptic, this was. And it's absolutely terrifying to read. And I think, to be honest with you, Jeff, I think we should have a little go through it bit by bit, because this is not the sort of thing that needs to be, don't take our word for this. Just listen to what they have to say on the matter. Over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, the overall, the thing coming out of this is that the British people have been hugely over-tolerant in the face of the woke communists telling us we have been intolerant and racist. Yes, it is not us that's at fault. It is those who wish to subdue us that are to blame for all of this. So as we go through it, please just bear that in mind. Now, it's in the Daily Sceptic and it's called These Fractured Isles, Britain's Drift Towards Civil War. And I've told you who these two guys are who wrote this. And they are, as Richard says, highly esteemed, highly respected people. And what the first thing to note is that they're saying that civil wars don't suddenly erupt. It's not like you get out of bed one day, peaceful yesterday, and there's suddenly civil war the next. Now, what actually happens is that gradually trust gets eroded, and wealth gets eroded, and truth gets eroded. And in the end, you're almost just living a false life within your own area or your own country, and people start rebelling, and that's when it starts to get violent. Now, I would say that we're on that slope already, well down that slope. They say that, civil wars begin not with gunpowder, but with people ceasing to believe in the same story. The same national story. Once that goes, that's when you begin to get the fractures that lead to civil unrest. So it's along those lines, and they've already done something along these lines called Could Britain Experience Civil War? And the whole thing is that is now, as they say, in the mainstream. Remember, no one's laughing about this anymore. No one's saying, ha ha ha, never here, are they? People are now looking at this with the rose-tinted glasses off, And they're looking at this and their blinkers are coming off. As he said, for years the idea seemed too absurd for polite company, the sort of thing one might mutter over the third glass of claret before disclaiming, but of course not here. Yet the evidence has been accumulating like uncollected rubbish. Civic disorder, collapsing legitimacy, an elite that rules but no longer persuades. Now, does that gel with you? Have we got a ruling class that no longer wants to persuade you of anything? Whether it be net zero or mass immigration, you are told what's going to happen and you have to wear it, even though you're in the majority. And this is the sort of thing that really should make us sit up and take notice of this article. It is quite long, I'll give it that, but it's got a lot in it and every word works hard. So, and as they say, they've been writing about this for the better part of a decade. And the argument seemed improbable to many at the time when they first started. But now, if you take a look around you, the signs are there. So, it's... and it all changed really when David Betts said he discussed the subject on Louise Perry's Mother, Maiden, Matriarch podcast. And that suddenly found its way right into the public domain and the public debate. And it showed an unease that is running through society. Can you feel it? Can you not feel it? This unease, which you're not meant to even acknowledge, because that, of course, is, you're inciting this and inciting that. No, it's there. I haven't incited it. No one who's talking about it now is inciting it. The people who incited it are those that set this whole train in motion 3 decades or more ago and continued it through. They are the ones at fault, don't you think, Richard?
Yes. What's highlighted in the article is that a miracle effectively took place in Britain, and that miracle was the tolerance of the British people. You can't really say it was restraint. It was just pure tolerance. I think that's the correct word, even though restraint has been a part of this, because there are so many negative ways that the British people could have reacted, but they haven't. I don't know. At the same time, I suppose it was tolerance as well. It's a difficult one. What is restraint? What is tolerance? It's a sort of bit of both, really. But I mean, as you said, Jeff, the industry. Let's just look at the industry. For decades, the industry of Great Britain has been destroyed. Okay, and we've just seen communities, like from my own personal experience in the South Wales valleys, we saw communities utterly devastated, just destroyed for multiple reasons. And this goes back a very long way. This goes back to, you could say, Thatcher, etc. But I think it goes back a little bit beyond that. I actually believe that the EU had a hell of a lot to do with this, incidentally. And I do recall, I believe, an interview with Norman Lamont where he said that this was all part of a plan, the deindustrialization of Britain. I might be wrong there. I think it was Norman Lamont. But at the end of the day, though, you've got the elites who are telling us that we should, as is highlighted in this article, the elites are telling us that we need to accept what's going on. There they are, like they're like country houses or in the Cotswolds, and somebody who's unaffected by, for instance, something like open door immigration, who's waving a Palestinian flag. Is there moralizing as they sit in their ivory towers? It's basically you've had decades of these people looking down upon the British people and telling them that they're backwards, that the culture is backwards, that they're racist, they're small-minded, and yet they sort of sit behind their sort of in what are effectively gated communities. I think back, it's like Southport, it didn't come out of nowhere. Most of us saw an event like Southport coming. We could see that coming, right? And this may come as a shock to the liberal elites. Maybe it won't, I don't know. But but then after Southport, the locals were totally gaslit and just told to ignore the truth, and there was information which was suppressed. It appears, I can't say for definite, of course, but it appears that information was suppressed by the police and by Sir Keir Starmer. But again, in the article, it just shows how low trust is. Is it 6 or 9% of people, trust the state?
Yeah.
I can't remember what figure it is exactly.
Yeah. One of the paragraphs that stuck out, another paragraph that stuck out for me was this one, and I'll read this one to you as well. The official mantra of modern Britain is that the people are not tolerant enough. On almost every question time panel or university seminar for the past quarter century, one hears the refrain that Britain is racist and intolerant, usually delivered by someone from a postcode where the only diversity is among the Labradors. Mention that your town has changed beyond recognition, and up pops the virtue-signalling professional or some earnest woman from the Cotswolds to explain that the real problem is you.
Yeah.
The applause follows on cue, like a ring on Pavlov's bell. And for those that don't know, Pavlov did an experiment with dogs where he rang a bell and then, after ringing the bell, produced food for the dog. And in the end, the dog only salivated when the bell rang. Yeah, you get the idea, conditioning. And that's exactly what these woke lefties do. They are conditioned to hear the words mass immigration is wonderful, and they just clap automatically. There's no thinking, there's no analysis, it's just pure reaction, pure conditioning. So that's that's the sort of thing that's included in this article, and it does paint a very disturbing picture of our society. So yeah.
Well, tolerance has been painted here as a virtue. Okay. Now, there comes a point, I think, which is sort of pushed in the article, hopefully I'm reading this correctly, where tolerance becomes a very negative thing, okay? I mean, what is it we're supposed to be tolerant of, okay? Are we supposed to be tolerant of the events we have seen for the past 2 weeks taking place in this country? We're meant to be tolerant of it. I'm sorry, the logic doesn't stack up. Why is it that people are being tolerant of evil? Pure evil on the streets of the United Kingdom right now, okay? Why should we be tolerant of not being able... these are very difficult words. I have to be very careful what I say here. Why do we have to be tolerant of stabbings on trains? Why do we have to be tolerant of that? Please tell me, is this about diversity? Now, of course, it's come out that this person obviously is a British male, and with a British name, so that removes any sort of questioning about the motivations behind this. Now, I don't care really what the motivations are. A lot of people have put a lot of stock in what the potential motivations are, and there's a reason for that, because we've seen that there is a motivation behind, like the things that happened in Manchester recently at the synagogue. There was a motivation behind that. And a few other events recently. But as far as I'm concerned, we've got to the point where crime itself is being tolerated. Whatever the cause, crime is, or motivation, crime itself is being tolerated. Be that shoplifting in supermarkets. I mean, the list is endless of what shouting. Racism is tolerated as long as it's coming from one section of society. That is tolerated. Sorry, Jeff, carry on. This whole thing of tolerance, it really is. Yeah.
I mean, I'll read you a little bit more what it says on the article. What masquerades as tolerance has in fact been endurance. But endurance,
Yes.
when endlessly exploited, hardens at last into bitterness. Ordinary people have borne with fortitude the dislocations of mass immigration, the contempt of the media class, and the moral lectures of those least touched by the consequences. And still the hectoring continues, the same tirades about hate and privilege delivered from Georgian farmhouses and BBC green rooms. It is one of the great inversions of our time, a nation that has tolerated almost everything, accused relentlessly of tolerating nothing. And that, I think, sums this up fantastically. This whole article is full of gems like that. It just shows you where we are at. It's a must read. It's a must read because it just shows where we're going, and it's not a good place either, because this is going to continue. The powers that be are demanding that you endure, not tolerate, endure to the nth degree every humiliation they pour on you. And that humiliation will continue until we say no.
Yes, this is a prime example of where the state completely breaks down. It is now ineffective in terms of what it should be doing under a democratic system, which is representing the will of the British people. And not just that, actually looking after the British people. Something dreadful has happened, and again, I sort of know what the article said, again, which is why I wanted to talk about tolerance initially. But as you said, this is endurance. Oh, my days. Is endurance an indefinite thing that the British people have to do? That's the question. Is it something that we should be subjugated to, and that we just have to sit down and suck it up and put up with this? Well, that's... but
yes,
again, all we are left with is...
Yeah.
All we're left with is the democratic route out, apparently. And yet most people don't believe in the democratic route. Now we have, obviously, there are incredible signs that, in things which are indicative of the state of play in the nation because of the surge in reform and centre-right politics and right-wing politics. That says everything you need to know. And don't say, what about the Tories? The Tories aren't right-wing. Don't think that for a moment. And what's worrying is Nigel Farage said that reform will be actually left of the Tories, I think, quite recently. So that makes you worry.
Yeah, it does. Now, the two authors also say that a guy called Karl Popper, writing The Open Society and Its Enemies, warned that unlimited tolerance will lead to the disappearance of tolerance itself. Yeah? And a society that endlessly absorbs aggression without reciprocation ceases to be virtuous. And Britain has reached that point, they say. The stiff upper lip has stopped quivering and has started to bare its teeth. And I think we are at that level right now. They're saying they've studied this stuff. They've studied it. We can feel it. Yes,
I mean, the good nature of the British people has been very much taken advantage of. And I will say that if there was a point of crossing, that would have been, I believe, the real point of crossing would have been under Tony Blair, with his actions in terms of opening the floodgates effectively. And of course, things didn't improve. They got worse. I mean, look at the Boris wave. I mean, a lot of people sort of poo-pooed the Boris wave, but I think it's a very, very factual and accurate description of what happened. I mean, yeah.
Yes. And now that we're beginning to awaken, the authors say that the awakening is visible everywhere. In the riots that ignited Southport and other towns in the summer of 2024, in the Unite the Kingdom marches, in the flag-raising campaigns in once apathetic suburbs. These are not orchestrated conspiracies, but organic expressions of belonging. They just sprung up. No one came out and told them. They just sprung up. They just took sort of inspiration from what other people were doing and went along. They weren't told to do it or anything like that. And the answer of a people long patronised, ignored, and occasionally prosecuted for noticing its own decline. Does this not all sound so right to you. You know, if you're listening to this, don't you recognise every single word that we've been saying from this article? Because it does to me. It just rings so true. Yeah, so all I can say is please go and look at this article and read it. And it's they talk about Britain's self-image of moderation. We're a moderate, we're a kindly, we're a sort of very low-key society. But there is a shift in the mood from embarrassment into defiance, that sort of idea. We're beginning to raise our lion's head, as it were. And if it continues down this same route, if people still insist on the lion being the most tolerant beast in the jungle, it ain't going to end well, I'm afraid. It just ain't going to end well. So, yeah,
Jeff,
this is a really good article.
Yes, it's amazing, but I mean, it's terrifying as well at the same time. It backs up a lot of what you would and I have been saying, and other social commentators for a very long time. We can see the signs of what does appear to be some kind of civil unrest. Civil war. It's a very strange thing, the concept of civil war. It's not a linear thing. This is something that there are jumps and starts. You know, there's flashpoints here and there, but eventually it appears to be moving towards a crescendo. Now, we have both observed the change in rhetoric by ordinary, previously apathetic, as you mentioned earlier, individuals who are now starting to use rhetoric that is a little bit fruity, we'll say. And there are, in some sections of society, calls on both sides, incidentally. I'm not talking about the Unite the Kingdom movement. We're talking about, amongst other demographics, calls for violence. And that is very worrying. I'm not saying this calls from the Unite the Kingdom movement, sorry, but I'm saying that there's calls for not the Unite the Kingdom movement, but calls on the right for people to stand up. Okay, but on the other side, on the other demographic side, there are calls for direct violence, and that is what's worrying me. But rhetoric has changed. People are getting angry. People are saying things that they shouldn't be saying right now in a normal society. The sort of rhetoric that you would attribute to the early stages of a civil war. And that concerns me.
Yeah, I had occasion to look back at some stuff from 15 years ago when we were repatriating soldiers from Afghanistan, places like that, and they were being brought through parade. You know, the cortege would go down the street or whatever. Wootton Bassett, prime example. And suddenly we found that a certain demographic wanted to do their own protest in that area to sort of honour the death of other people, which did not fit in with what the locals wanted. And it all kicked off a bit there, and it wasn't just there either. It was north of London as well. And there were lots and lots of people trying to decry our soldiers that came back in a coffin from abroad. And it was not on. And the British people were really upset. And I watched some of the videos, and they were saying things that if they said it today, they could well be arrested. Yeah, we have gone right. We are being herded down a road of self-denial, over-tolerance, and all the rest of it. And we're always being told that we're not tolerant enough. You must do more. You must do more. You must be more welcoming. Even the king has said we must be more welcoming. The trouble is that the truth is the reverse, says this article, about our tolerance. The real story, and I'll put it up on here, Yet the truth is the reverse. The real story of post-imperial Britain is not chronic intolerance, but vast forbearance. For decades, the public has absorbed the largest social and cultural transformation in its history with scarcely more than a grumble. There are, however, only so many times one can smile politely and note how nice it is to have a new curry house, kebab shop, or, in our more enlightened age, vape emporium and Turkish barber occupying what used to be the post office, before wondering if diversity has delivered quite the returns advertised. The cuisine may have improved marginally, the civic fabric rather less so. So the whole thing here is that we are being browbeaten by people who are meant to look after us, people who are meant to protect us, into not protecting ourselves. And that is the real, gut-wrenching story about all of this. But we know this, don't we? We all know this. We've all given up on our powers that be. And they're going to see I think it's going to start in May next year with the local elections that are coming along, if they allow them to go on. There's already talk of them having to delay those because of changes in local constituencies and all this sort of thing. They're going to be pushing this as far into the future as they can, all these elections.
Yeah, Jeff, the thing is, so going back to one of your points earlier, you see, we have been told to accept high immigration, okay, that there's people coming across into Britain and they desperately need to do so. And but then the rhetoric changed. At the same time, the rhetoric changes, and that we're told by the government that they're going to put control on immigration. But every government, for goodness knows how long, has lied. They said that they'll bring down the numbers. At the same time, the numbers have gone up. A typical example of this is the smashing of the gangs. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Where basically citizenship became sort of like a transactional thing, and borders between Britain and France are just a little bit of paperwork. Even the king himself said there were no borders between us and France. Yeah, okay. That was a delightful little bit of commentary there by His Majesty. But when were we ever consulted about this? When were the British people ever asked if we wanted this? All I can see is some other agenda appears to be afoot here. You can't keep importing chaos into Britain without there being at some point some kind of kickback. And I'm not saying any of this. Look, as I said earlier, there are people. The rhetoric is changing amongst the British people, not just amongst those, in the United Kingdom. In fact, I'm not even saying the United Kingdom movement. I'm saying amongst the British people, a lot of whom the Patriots do attend the United Kingdom rallies. But there is a lot of change in rhetoric where people are saying, okay, it looks like we need something more than the political way out of this. And that's the issue, because people are desperate. They just don't trust politicians. Now, this is where I think we've got one last stab at this, and that's through Advance UK. That's why I keep circling Advance UK, because they're the people who are going to put pressure on the last, the potentially the most electable political party right now, which might emphasize the might affect some change. And if they don't, then Advance UK will stand there as the alternative. And don't think that can't happen, because we've just seen what's happened in some of the polling right now, where the Greens are ahead of the Conservatives and Labour. It's now looking like it could be a situation where the opposition party will be the Greens. I mean, what? Terrifying, Jeff.
Unbelievable. Yeah, one thing I would just say, adding, when you talk about mass inward migration, or we're told that they're fleeing, that what we're actually being told, in reality is they have the right to be here. They have the right just to walk in. We can't get rid of them. And we're constantly told, aren't we, that their human rights needs are greater than ours. So our right to be safe in our own country is below their need to be here. That's what we're being told. They have the right to do this, and they have the right to demand it. It is their entitlement so to do. And that really sticks in the craw for most people.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
Jeff,
afraid it does.
Were it not so, you would find the prioritisation of Britain's homeless ex-servicemen who are sleeping on the streets. If it were not so, you'd see them getting the prioritisation in housing and in being put up in hotels. But that is not the case. That is not the case. It's like we have to accept this new diversity as if it's some kind of virtue in its own right. Diversity is a virtue. Oh, I don't think so. You go to many other countries in this in the world, and you will find that they reject diversity. And yet, a lot of the people who are coming from these countries that reject diversity, we are supposed to assimilate under the banner of diversity as a wonderful thing. I mean, this is not about ethnicity now. This is not about racism. This is about a clash of cultures and belief. And as this, as this article says, what we're talking about is the destruction of a country happens when people don't believe in the same thing, where you're not sharing the same psychological, moral, and spiritual space. That's the problem.
Yeah. Now, one of the commenters under the article says something which reminds me of what Richard has said before. Basically, that if we're going to have a political solution to this, the party that comes along, any new party, because it's going to have to be a new party, like Reform or whoever it is, Reform UK looks the favourite at the moment. If they fail, no one will forgive them, basically. Fail and the old power, fail and the old power will come back, because it always does. And it comes back in the form, as in the USSR, with oligarchs, powerful people that snatch great big bits of industry and stuff and run off with all the dosh. You saw it. And if you think it can't happen here, I beg to differ. I think it could easily happen here. You only have to look at the pandemic. Just look at the pandemic and look at the billions that were robbed from us right under our noses. Yeah. And that was during a lockdown period.
Well, Jeff, I mean, look, as I have said before, if Reform do not deliver, okay, if there is no meaningful change, I mean, I don't know if we've got longer, if there's not a general election soon, I don't know. I don't know if we've got long enough politically to sort this mess out. That's the fear. And I think that is something that a lot of commentators are saying and experts are saying right now. Now, I'm not saying David Betts is specifically saying that. But the problem is, if Reform fail to deliver, believe me, Nigel Farage, if you think Keir Starmer is unpopular, and apparently Starmer's government is less popular right now than Prince Andrew, that's a recent finding. Yeah, there's a recent poll on that. And I'm afraid I think Nigel Farage will be even more unpopular than Keir Starmer if he fails to deliver. I mean, and this is why I keep pushing for Advance UK, because they're putting the fire beneath the feet of Reform. If there's going to be change, you have to go behind the people you know want change. You have to be supporting the people who want change. Again, the Unite the Kingdom movement. That's a unifying movement of people who want peaceful change, all right? Yet, even amongst the people within that, there is full awareness. That's what I should have said earlier. There's full awareness that if something doesn't change, then it's all going to go to hell in a handcart. And that's the issue. That's the state of play in Britain right now. And to be honest with you, people like Tommy Robinson have been vilified by the elites and by the media. And yet he's one of the only people has been actually pushing for peace. He's the one who's been telling people, don't do anything stupid. The United Kingdom movement has been there since the start, saying, don't do anything stupid. At the same time, everyone is incredibly angry, and this is a justifiable anger. There's nothing wrong with being angry at the situation in the United Kingdom. That's a healthy thing, because otherwise you must have your head so far in the sand that you cannot see the reality of the situation.
Yeah, we must now be telling our politicians our tolerance has run out. That's it. And our politicians must be told, you're never going to get back in. You have lost power. Your party has lost power. You're gone. You're history because you failed us. You told us to be tolerant to the nth degree, which is impossible. We cannot do this. And that's the end of it. And otherwise, well, yeah. Once it snaps, it snaps. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle.
Well, in the article, Jeff, it does make mention that half of young people today are saying that they'd back hostile activism, and a third saying let it all burn, from what I can gather. I might be wrong there, from what I can gather inside the article, because I don't have it fully up. It's a long article to actually dissect whilst we're doing this. We're just trying to go through the bits we can pick out. And that just goes to show how deep this disconnection runs between the elites, the liberal elites, and the young people today, because we've got a new generation of people who are coming up now behind the millennials, who are totally wokely brainwashed into, yes, diversity is our strength. And they've got a because they're living it. They're having to grow up right now in the most awful circumstances where, you know, young men and young women especially are too frightened to walk the streets. I mean, people right now are too frightened to catch a train, okay? Now, I'm not saying that the individual who allegedly, I have to, and I retrospectively say this throughout the entire video that you're now watching, that allegedly was the knife attacker, that he isn't British, but there is something that is an issue in terms, because in terms of diversity, he is British. That's it. We've been told he's British. But then again, it just sort of changes your perception on what is it to be British. Now, I don't mean that because he's the accused is a black man. That's not nothing to do with that. This is more down to potential of values. I mean, but then again, if he has mental health, here's the thing though, Jeff. Here's the thing. If he has mental health issues, then this is nothing to do with tolerance of diversity. This is something else which is broken down in society. And that is the worrying thing. Was this was this individual known to have mental health issues and to be a danger to the public? I mean, we don't fully know at the moment the truth on that matter. But again, this leads to speculation. There's too much speculation going around at the moment. At the same time, if you don't, what are people left with other than speculation, where we're not being given the full facts, where we have governments, consecutive governments, who have withheld the truth, who have gaslit the British public. So this is why it's important to release as much information as soon as possible. We have said this from the start. You know, otherwise we start entering a Welsh choir boy territory. Yeah.
Yeah, I do gather that this isn't the only thing he's up for. Something happened a couple of days before as well. So
possibly, but we don't know. Allegedly, that these are these are all we don't know.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that's just a general. How many times has that sort of thing happened in the past? because we've had all sorts of horrible things happening in this country, but we then get sidetracked into situations that are not involved in the mass immigration
Yes, exactly.
argument.
That's
so
it.
we
That's
have to be
precisely
very
the
careful.
point. Yeah,
But
yeah.
that whole thing right now, the woke left are saying, you see, he's British, he's got a British name, therefore there is no problem. Never has been, never will be.
Precisely.
End. And they want to draw a line under the whole thing, and they can't be allowed to do that. One individual, they say, one individual event doesn't make this a problem. Well, one individual event on the other side doesn't make it a non-problem. So
You see, this is where, well, Jeff, in Britain, there are ethno-nationalists who will capitalise upon this as well, I'm afraid, because they will be starting this is on the other side of the spectrum, because they will then potentially point towards knife crime amongst the black community, Afro-Caribbean. Yeah. And that's another issue altogether. This guy I don't know if he was Afro-Caribbean. And that's where the conversation starts to become food for the real far right, which is waiting in the wings. It's a very dangerous thing, and we have to be very aware of that. I mean, just going off on a tangent here, because after reading parts of the article. I mean, you just think about it, because you've got Keir Starmer talking about patriotic renewal, right? It's utterly absurd. You've got a man who is constantly, well, not just Starmer himself, but we've had a complete hollowing out by the establishment of a country, and then they think they can sort of fit it all back in and create this new patriotic renewal with just these meaningless slogans that nobody actually, well, very few people in Britain can relate to. Talking, it's like a PR campaign about, love, sacrifice, etc. And it's like, I think the British people have sacrificed enough now. Again, through tolerance, or rather, endurance.
Yeah. No, you make a good point there. What they've done is they've done their absolute level best to destroy patriotism within this country in their move to destroy the country. The trouble is they now see a pushback, and that what they want to do is tell you it's patriotic to be even more tolerant. That's what they're telling you.
Yeah.
You must endure more. Be a patriot by enduring even more of this. Jeff. I've had enough. I've had enough.
Yeah. Yeah, by the way, that's not a symbol towards. That's not a Ricky Jones. Yeah.
No,
it's metaphorical. Cease. It's metaphorical. It's metaphorical. But no,
don't make excuses, Richard. Don't make excuses.
Yeah, but it was like at the Labour Party conference when they were waving the British flag. I mean, it was to me. I was watching that. It. No, it was like watching a load of vampires holding crucifixes up, like.
Yes. They hate the flag. They detest it. They don't want to wave it. That was all just for show, PR. They don't believe in it because they've all been taking the flags down. The only flags they've been leaving up in these places are Pally flags. So don't believe a word these people say.
Oh, but they'll blame our woes and everything on Brexit. That's the other side of this as well. I mean, that's what these people will do. But I mean, the signs have all been there with what we're going through and the way that they want to control the narrative, because, of course, all this is leading towards a digital ID. Okay, this is all say, oh, it's bad, is it? Oh, the country's in a bit of a state. Oh, you're not happy, are you? Oh, in that case, you better get a digital ID. Then we can control the situation and everything will go away. Yeah, all right, okay. I mean, you could see this around the time of lockdowns, with the health passport. Health passports, what an incredible concept. Yeah, sorry, Jeff, over to you, mate.
Yeah, because if you go somewhere with a health passport, it makes you healthier. Must do. Yes. Anyway, having read the article, I will say at the end, they do put out a sort of a message that maybe it's not quite the end yet. And they say, civil war is not destiny. It is the consequence of denial. If leaders continue to mistake managed decline for stability, the result will not be a sudden apocalypse, but a slow unravelling, until one morning Britain wakes to find it has learned the hard way what it has truly become. The clock is still ticking, faintly whispering its warning. End the illusion before the illusion ends you, is how it ends. And we need to
Powerful
wake
stuff.
up. We really do. Yeah, we
Yeah.
just need to wake up and understand that we have been gaslit for 30 years into believing that we are not tolerant, when in actual fact we have endured the worst and have put up with it. And I think the people are now saying no more.
Well, that's it. The people are saying no more. The people have had enough. The British people have had enough. So what does that mean then? Like, really, how does that in the real world play out? When people
Well,
have
I
lost
think-
faith in the
yeah.
voting system, when, well, justifiably so, incidentally, they've completely lost faith in that. I understand those feelings. Yourself and myself, Jeff, we will always push for what is left, if there is anything left of the political off-ramp. We will always push for that. And neither yourself nor myself will ever endorse violence on the streets.
The thing is that people have voted for years. Every time they vote for something, they get something else. Not what they voted for. They get the opposite sometimes. In fact, most of the time, they get the opposite of what they voted for, especially where immigration is concerned. Whatever they vote for, they never get it. And the powers that be, the people who rely on this democracy, must realise somewhere in their thick skulls that if you don't do what the voter wants, they're not going to vote for you. And now the Tories are facing absolute destruction, and now Labour is facing absolute destruction as political forces, and they're probably going to try and blame the British people. Yes, they'll blame the British people for not being tolerant enough and voting again for them. I give up.
They'll blame people
I
like
give up
yourself
with
and
them.
myself as well, Jeff. We'll get the blame. Yeah, because we happen to mention the train that's coming down the train track right towards us as a nation, which is the potential of a civil war. Don't think for 1 minute that Jeff or myself or many of the other social commentators, especially the people who wrote this article, that they want civil war. That is the exact opposite of what we want. We want our political class. Sorry, no, I would say we want our political class to deal with the situation and sort this country out. But we know that this specific political class or the political class have no intention of doing it. What we want is the political system to sort this out. The democratic route.
What we want is the British people to be the political system.
Oh,
and to run their lives through their own... At the moment, we now have a layer called... And we call it the political class, don't we? Our betters, our political masters. No, don't accept that. We are the politicians. Us. Every day. We go out to work. We do this, we do that. We have families. We are the political class. And we should make sure that those who we elect do as we want, not as the WEF or the UN or whoever wants. Some rich oligarch somewhere in the world, some billionaire who just feeds them a bit of money. Oh, yeah, we'll do that. No, we're in charge. That's the system we have got to get back in this country. We have to run the country, not the politicians. They just nurture it, look after it for us. We must run it. There you go.
Well, the thing is, I think we've said enough on this, but what I will say though, which is very important, is that this actually cuts deeper than politics, and basic sort of ideological swings in terms of the political spectrum. This is way beyond that. This is a spiritual and moral collapse in the country. Again, I think about the events of these knife attacks, and we've got a situation where there is not the moral backbone or the societal impetus there to create a safe environment for all people in this country. Again, we're talking potentially about an allegedly a British male, a British male who allegedly, a British male who allegedly committed this atrocity on the train. If we had the will and to sort out this country, to create a safe space like it used to be, then this wouldn't be happening. These events are happening just too commonly, and it's not always about a certain demographic. This is the breakdown is far more systemic. We need to get back to our basic roots for this country, and that is our Christian heritage. Okay, we need to be getting back to church. We need to remember who we are. If we want the country of yesteryear, when there were no attacks on synagogues, when there were no attacks on trains, if we want the country of yesteryear, we have to be the people of yesteryear. And those people were Christian. They lived in a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and with Almighty God through Jesus Christ. Well, Jesus Christ is Almighty God as well, part of the Trinity. But until that happens, don't expect too much to change through the political system, all right? It's not going to work. We have to change. And, by the way, sorry, I have to interject here. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and become a channel member. And thank you to everyone who supports us as well on Patreon and PayPal. It helps a lot so we can keep doing these videos. But we need a spiritual off-ramp. We talk enough about the political one. We need a spiritual off-ramp. And there's only one spiritual off-ramp to prevent a civil war. Jeff.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. Church is becoming more central to my life in that I attend it and I go as often as I can. But that's a decision for you. It's just, that's what we're claiming, that's what we're saying, and I believe in it. So anyway, on that note, all I can say is thank you very, very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and don't worry too much, but please read that article. It is really informative. And on that note, I'll say it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him, from Mr. Jeff Taylor. Goodbye.
Goodbye.